Join us and our friends as we fall down the rabbit hole of security wonder. If you're ready to see how deep it goes, you've found the right place. Pour your tea. You're not late for office hours. And now, our Red Queen, Tara Wheeler.
Hey folks, I hope you are having a wonderful week. I'm Tara Wheeler. I hope everybody's recovered enough to hang out with us today. It's fabulous to be here with you. As always, James Byerly is here with me, and Jones, of course, our intrepid head of MSP and MSSP relationships. It's already been a week. Oh my God. How's everybody doing?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Here in my little booth.
I'm super jealous of your phone booth over there. That's a neat little spot.
It is, and it's actually fuzzy, so like I may bring my Godzilla poster going forward.
Fuzzy is awesome. Deviant is starting to do a fuzzy wall behind him for his videos, which is really good. I was helping him tack a bunch of the stuff up on the wall and the furry stuff the other day. It's pretty fun. I don't know. I like my hard edges and chip on the shoulder achievement stacked behind me, I think. But what's really important over this vacation is that I actually had time. Guys, I went to the comic book shop. I haven't been to the comic book shop in forever. Check this out. Has anybody seen Three Jokers? If you have not, this is a kick-ass graphic novel. Like, seriously, just give it a shot if you haven't had a chance to get to it yet. Like, there's a lot of really good stuff out there that is isolated enough that you can like jump into it. And you're not trying to read like 700 back issues of anything like that, but also like you'll know enough of the story to appreciate it. It's pretty good stuff. Did you do anything fun? Anybody get a chance to do any nerd shit?
No, I didn't actually. All family time, downtime, and eating. I'm probably full of cheese at this point.
It's like Great British Bake Off, cheese week.
Yeah.
I know. James posted some good food pics while we were out. I saw that.
Yeah. Well, you get kind of old with just the traditional ham and all that stuff. So we don't do traditional food very often. So.
That sounds. We didn't do too much traditional food in terms of like the turkey or ham. Well, we did the ham, but my brother smokes a brisket.
Ooh.
And when he says he smokes a brisket, I don't mean like he smokes brisket. I mean he smokes like a cow on the back deck. So like there's a good solid fifth or sixth of a cow that's out back there for just days and days and days. It's meat candy by the time we get there. And then we all went and saw Nosferatu.
Oh, nice.
Oh, it's so good. It is so incredibly good. If you like Robert Eggers, and I was a huge fan of The Northman, if you get a chance to watch that, that's Alexander Skarsgård doing this reinterpretation of Prince Amleth, the Hamlet myth that, Saxo Grammaticus recorded as one of the myths that Shakespeare based Hamlet on. It's super, super interesting and fascinating the way he reinterpreted that, and his job on Nosferatu was just mwah, absolutely. As an elder goth, yes. Absolutely. So yeah, it's I'm watching horror right on the big screen, and what the hell is happening with Beyond Trust? Well, I look away from the keyboard for 5 minutes. Jones, what happened? Seriously.
Yeah, so pretty big story popped up here recently with a Chinese APT exploiting an API key in Beyond Trust and gaining access to the US Treasury. And as if, the implications of compromising the US Treasury aren't bad enough, some of the new details that have come out in the last 24 hours is that they did in fact gain access to some data, and they were able to gain access to the Office of Foreign Assets Control, the OFAC.
God.
And that's an office that's been around the Treasury since the 50s, but they are the ones that enforce economic and trade sanctions. So this is, kind of on the heels of some other really big notable things that are being attributed to Chinese state actors. The Salt Typhoon hack, the T-Mobile network, and gaining access to call logs and text messages. I think that makes the 8th telecom to be compromised. So, the Treasury thing on top of that is certainly very concerning. and is certainly huge news. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. I wasn't until kind of digging through some information here, but Beyond Trust is in 75% of the Fortune 100 organizations.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. It's this is one of those times when you look at a hack and you're like, this is going to be way worse than most people understand it's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to something that you look at and you go, there's going to be a big logistic disruption and there's going to be some cost to it, but it's going to be a cost that is contained. Like CrowdStrike this summer was bad,
Yeah.
right? But it
Yeah.
was mostly money bad, not human cost bad. This is human cost bad. Right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm understanding what was going on with this particular hack, the access to the foreign assets offices, like this is the kind of thing that becomes like a Mission Impossible plot, right? Like go capture the USB stick or it's going to reveal the locations and
Yeah.
identities of 500 foreign agents. Like this is that kind of hack. It's not good, people. And the real challenge here too is I'm already getting calls from Fortune 100s and that are asking questions like I'm part of like a bunch of lists and getting comments and questions, getting questions about this like what do we do to protect ourselves. No, that's not the question you should be asking yourself right now. The question you should be asking yourself right now is where was the defense in depth at the government level? And for the small businesses and MSPs and MSSPs we work with, this becomes FUD on a lot of really problematic levels, right? I mean, most of us haven't checked our emails yet from the break, but I mean, the chats are live on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this is, something that I think I'm in a way kind of glad that we have an opportunity to talk about this topic because third-party vendor risk management is everywhere, and a lot of organizations are just woefully unprepared for dealing with stuff like this. And with the breadth of Beyond Trust influence and connection to, the top 100 organizations in the country, that's a really scary place, to be. So, this, I guess, gives us some fodder to really say things like third-party vendor risk management and really put this into the forefront as you're starting the year off. Hey, you've got a great use case here for ensuring that you have all of your stuff locked down, that you understand who your vendors are, that you understand how they're connected to you. So I think this is, unfortunate for the U.S. Treasury, unfortunate for the U.S. public. But I think this is sometimes what people need to actually pay attention to this stuff.
And this is like when we say the Treasury Department, we don't just mean the people that print bills. We mean the Secret Service.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like that's what's going on here. This is a non-trivial issue. Like when I say something is absolutely awful, I mean it's pretty bad. When I say something is non-trivial, like pull out your keyboards.
Yeah.
Right. There's the fun of waving our hands around with FUD and cybersecurity, and then there's something like this one. So Jones, do you want to summarize maybe for the folks that aren't as familiar with the larger enterprise solutions? We've been hearing about Beyond Trust and on every vendor floor for the last 15 years. What can you talk to us a little bit about what that is and how it might filter down into some smaller businesses in terms of what they might expect to see over the course of the next 6 months?
Yeah, sure. So Beyond Trust provides several services, but namely the one that's had the most trouble of late. And actually, the Treasury incident is not the only recent situation with Beyond Trust. Unfortunately, there's been a handful of instances of CDEs and exploits in their services, but they provide privileged remote access to provide support for other organizations. And so this harkens back to those of us that have PTSD from the Kaseya attack from a couple of years ago. This is the same kind of situation where we're dealing with an organization that has privileged access, remote access to all of their customers. And this is a service that's built this way on purpose because they are a service provider. They are providing this service to customers who are unable to or not in a position to provide it for themselves. So the very nature of the connection is that they are there to provide this kind of unfettered remote access. It is supposed to be a very controlled and very secure channel into the client environment. But as we've seen something like an API key being exposed. And it's still unclear exactly how that happened. From everything that I've seen so far, no detail has been released on how that API key was exposed. But the net of this is that a lot of these services running remotely are using API keys to function. And so this really provides a one-stop shop for a threat actor to look for something like this. How many times have we seen folks leaving API keys in GitHub submissions, right? And it ends up out there and you just gave the keys away. Hopefully that is not what happened here. But so that's the quick and dirty explanation. Remote access for support for other organizations.
It's not good, because when you see was able to compromise several privileged workstations,
Yep.
that's usually, I mean, 90% of the time you're looking at clicking on a phishing link. I mean, and I might even be conservative with that estimate. That's rough. And you know, we have the kind of trust we have. It's so funny. Beyond trust isn't, right? And that's the joke we've made so long, because you know, who are you to trust? You're just choosing to trust this organization with that particular trademark. Like James Jones, you and I, we've got people that trust us and will do what we say and will let us into their computers. And you know, that's a pretty sacred thing, honestly. I think a lot of us kind of think about this as a pretty serious trust. But we ourselves, if we're doing our jobs well, try to make it so that a system can tell whether or not we were there. There
Yeah.
should be some kind of immunity to a single point of failure in vendor management, just as I've been saying in terms of CrowdStrike all year long. CrowdStrike hit a lot of different organizations different ways. This one's dangerous because it's identity and access management.
Yeah.
And identity and access management is not the same thing as XDR or EDR like CrowdStrike. This is the keys to the kingdom. This is the ball game for these organizations. So yeah, I mean, James, one of the things that this reminds me of is the conversation you and I have had a few times, which is, you know, users say, all right, you're telling me to not click on links and you're telling me to not trust anybody, but you just sent me a link and you told me to trust you. Why? Which, good for you, smart users, excellent work. But like, this is such a fundamental conflict we've got in information security. How do you have these conversations with your customers?
So one area we've really taken to is that when we communicate with our customers, we're making sure we communicate with everybody when it makes sense at the same time. So if I say, hey, we're rolling out this tool, everybody in that organization gets that email. So maybe it doesn't look as suspicious. We've made sure that when we send those emails, we'll throw in something that kind of indicates that we actually know what they do or know about the company. So we've gone there with that, and then we've also explained to our customers that we don't expect you to be the goalie. You're not the goalie in the hockey game, because we should have tooling that prevents that click from doing harm.
Right.
Now, maybe those tools don't do it, but if it at least tells us, hey, somebody clicked and things are going sideways all of a sudden, then we can stop it before it gets out of hand. We had a customer that got phished. We got the alert that somebody logged in from another country, and we smashed it immediately. And then we went back and realized they don't need anybody from outside the U.S. to log in. So we fixed that pretty immediately.
That's a great way to do it.
One of the things I heard you getting towards, James, that I wanted to kind of highlight, because I think it's really important, especially in 2025, right? The second day of 2025. I think this is more important now than ever. And that is, I think a lot of people have spent a lot of time trying to stop users from clicking on things. And it's really been, in my professional opinion, kind of a fruitless battle. People are going to click on stuff. And so where I heard you going, James, that I wanted to highlight was, I think we should assume people are going to click on it. It's our jobs as vendors and security professionals and folks who are advising our customers to go, okay, click on the thing. It shouldn't work is the way we should be setting this up, right? Through least privilege through endpoint protection, through all of these other mechanisms and tools that we have, your users should be able to click on a phishing link. It shouldn't work, right? And of course, I'm making a very broad statement here. There are some things that are going to be very challenging to prevent. But for the most part, I think we can do a better job as a community ensuring that we're really getting to the point of just assume they're going to do bad. When I learned to drive, my dad taught me just assume everybody else is going to do the worst thing possible. And I think that's the way we should be looking at these problems. Assume they're going to do the stupidest thing possible.
It's not even the stupidest thing, right? It's just they just don't know, right?
Well,
it's like,
that's true.
yeah,
That's true.
it's. I don't think they're dumb. I mean, I had a couple of lawyers take strips off my hide before for doing stupid things I didn't know, right? And they're, but the answer that they've always given me that I feel like are simple rules that lawyers will tell you. What's the number one rule a lawyer gives you? It's shut the fuck up Friday.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah.
Stop talking right now. Like that's the number one thing. And if you know that and you know what a lawyer is going to say, and you're dealing with any situation where you're like, I should have a lawyer. Yes. And also,
Yep.
that's kind of the rules. It's like we want to have those kinds of like behavioral rules embedded in users, not just like if you do something, call us right away. Don't try to hide it. I think it's the equivalent of like clicking on links, right? Clients are going to say things to people, and you got to mop it up eventually. But if you train them not to, without asking first, you've done something well and meaningful, I think. James, I think you were going to say something too.
Well, so today we were greeted with a fair amount of snow, and there's two things that happen in Iowa. One, the people that drive forget the first day about driving in snow. And then I like saying that, assume that people will do the worst thing when your dad was teaching you drive. I tell people all the time, I feel that I'm a pretty safe driver. And I, if I end up in the ditch, it's going to be because my skills, my car, everything were beat out by ice, but it's all the other people that are around me that are the wild cards. And I think that so applies to, things like phishing, because as you were hinting at, Jones, we've taken efforts to obviously stop a large percentage of phishing, spam, all that from even reaching the user. And then it's up to the user to kind of be able to discern, is this legit? Is this not? And then, yes, that other side of it where we now put the technology, to go further for when they do make that incorrect choice and they click or they download or whatever. And then we can start, stopping it. If Bob in accounting clicking on an email is the difference between prosperity and bankruptcy, you need to go back and look at your entire security solution.
Amen.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because if Bob gets ransomwared and that's lights out for a small business, then you have done nothing for your system other than you created a scapegoat, because it could have been Bob in accounting, it could have been Todd in marketing. And this need to protect users, it's important, but it's also, they have to understand that, hey, users are fallible, and the technology exists if you're willing to put it in place to stop those things.
You can't. Yeah, go ahead, Jones. I was going to say, but I'm going to follow up with that with like the Army agreeing with James here. But go for it.
Yeah. The thing I was going to add there was I think it's almost unfair to the average user that they're expected to be as cyber literate as we are, right? I mean, that is essentially the role that they have, is by virtue of whether you're Bob in accounting or anything, you are expected to know your job, but then a fair chunk of ours as well. And I think that is supremely unfair to the users. It is what it is. I mean, by virtue of using an information system in a modern business. But I think that's where, the next step needs to be is, we should have the ability to protect ourselves and to protect these users from these things without having them analyzing SSL certificates and things like that, looking for ANSI characters and things like that. I mean, that's silly that you're expecting your Aunt Sharon to try to find the Cyrillic character that got snuck into a URL somewhere. That's bananas.
It is, and there's something that the U.S. government announced this a little bit back. It's the Army was announcing an effort to assist small businesses in critical areas with cybersecurity requirements. This is an older story, but it's evergreen because it goes to the fact that no matter how hard we try, the small businesses that we are all here to care about are vulnerable according to the Army, right, and the Department of Defense, and they're vulnerable for this reason. It's
Yeah.
because these businesses do not have, and like larger businesses are as vulnerable, it's just not as existential for them, right? CrowdStrike hasn't gone out of business. Swift on Security skeeted the other day, like they waited till CrowdStrike opened 50% down and bought hard. Why? Nobody was leaving CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
Right. And like they've doubled their money on that particular investment. It's great. I should be taking investment advice from like internet personalities at this point, right? Like seriously, it was a killer idea. I should have done the exact same damn thing. But the thing that we're looking at here is this is an effort to try to get these small businesses some of the help they need. And yet you're looking at a different department of the US government caught by the exact same kind of thing that would have caught every one of those small businesses with Kaseya, with CrowdStrike, with anything that hits an endpoint, right?
Yep.
So, like, what is the answer? Jones, prophesy for us. Walk out into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, come back, bring us some wisdom. What do we do with this third party management? I mean, I can holler about single points of failure all day long, but what do we do?
This is a really challenging problem, Tara, to be. I mean, I think, the two of you are obviously acutely aware of this. This is a really challenging problem, especially at a time and at an economy where outsourcing to third parties is, I mean, the almost go-to standard answer for most organizations, especially in the SMB space. So I think this ultimately really um, does some harm to the movement because we do need organizations to start taking a step and if you can't do it yourself, to find a provider. But I think this does do some harm to those who are saying, well, CrowdStrike was a provider, right? Beyond Trust is a provider. Kaseya is a provider. All of these have incidents, have situations that negatively impacted their customer base. So I think what we do as a community is really just hold folks accountable. There's probably, in the CrowdStrike case, there were shortcuts that were taken. That's why people were impacted. We don't know exactly what happened with the Beyond Trust situation yet, but I'm willing to bet that there's probably some process that wasn't followed, a shortcut that was taken, something that wasn't secured, right? So I think just as a community, we need to hold ourselves accountable, self-police a little bit better, and really, each of these providers needs to hold itself to the highest standard. So easy to say out of my mouth, very hard to ultimately do. But I think this is a unique problem that really only the community itself is in a position to judge. The outside edge of that is you can have the government step in, but I've never been a fan of the phrase "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." So, what do you think?
Classic from the 1980 Reagan campaign, exactly, right? It's true because there needs to be a spread of knowledge there. Like, and there's some limitations and some politics that are around this, but the real truth is, I think you're right. The answer does come from the community. I'm not there. There's one exception on this one, which is that CISA's work has mattered everywhere to almost every single person I've ever spoken to in information security over the last, especially 3 to 5 years. CISA has made a difference in information security. And like when you get put on CISA's known vulnerabilities list, right? Like the Beyond Trusting, that surfaced a lot of what was going on. I love that, but I mean, there's only so many hands to help, right?
Yeah,
And at the small business level, you're still mostly reporting what's gone wrong, not necessarily getting remediation assistance. And like we're getting people are loving what you're saying about this taking responsibility too thing, Jones. Like you got likes on Facebook from Mitch Parker, some other folks saying this is exactly the answer. But I mean, how do you take this responsibility when, James, you and I have had conversations before about customers that we've dealt with, and it's a struggle sometimes with those same small businesses who are facing some of these requirements to get them to understand that, you know, a few dollars, a few dozen dollars a month per employee in a regulated industry, in a small business that is a supplier to a major contractor for the DoD, is not an unreasonable number of dollars to spend to secure your business.
Yeah.
And that can be a real challenge. So, you know, when do we start to talk to small businesses and MSPs and go, look, MSPs have to be reasonable about the prices they charge, but small businesses need to understand that, like law and HR, these expenses are coming for your business if you do a good enough job that you last a year or two and you start to get some bigger contracts. Like, how do we have that conversation with people too?
I mean, I think it's it's trying to compare those. If you're talking to a business and you're saying, well, do you do, any of the bookkeeping yourself? And if there's, no, we don't, we push all that off. Well, why? Don't have the time, don't have the expertise. Okay, great. Probably the same reason why you wouldn't review your own contracts. You'd hand those to a lawyer. So it's just trying to explain that we fit in there. If you have a keyboard on your desk, we need to be in that conversation. And whether, and then obviously, yes, on the MSP side, the pricing, really the minimums, I think, are the one thing that are tough. I understand why minimums exist for a lot of providers, but I've never been a fan of them because that always pushes out a certain subset of businesses. But yeah, really getting them into that understanding that this is a critical service to your business. And and even if they say something like, well, I do, I use the QuickBooks. Okay, how long could you survive without your QuickBooks? And
Oh God, no, please, no,
right,
don't do it.
right. And then it becomes a question of, like, you've now tied a bookkeeping issue into an IT issue, whether it's the installed version on your computer or it's the online version. You've kind of helped to put that together. And something I was going to say, and you, Terry, you'd mentioned about Reagan. Another thing that Reagan said that I've actually appreciated was, trust but verify. And I think when we talk about, the third party risk, when we talk about supply chain attacks, I always come back to cyber deception. Like, was there anybody, that was affected at the Treasury? Did anyone have, a tokenized Excel file? Did they have a honeypot? Like, those are the kind of
Right.
things that I won't say they're table stakes, because they are kind of, they take some know-how to put together. But for the Treasury, like, that should be something like, half the computers that you would scan at the Treasury should be possible honeypots. Like, that's the kind of environment that you need, where an attacker will be like, I don't know what's real and what's not. I maybe want to leave. And that's, that's part of that, the layered defense, the trying to make the click less dangerous, or less effective. I know when SolarWinds happened, there were a lot of reports that people that were using things like Thinkest Canary and others, that they were getting some weird notifications, and then they were coming from the SolarWinds box on their network. So it makes sense. And those are things that are, again, they're not difficult to put together. You just need somebody willing to do it.
Are we lacking in terms of some of the news and hype that we get at like the F100 level? So, folks, one of the things that we do is we grab a couple of these links in advance. We talk about the news that's gonna matter to small businesses and managed service providers over the course of the week when we talk about what we're going to be talking about in this particular broadcast. And one of the things I actually just did, because I wanted to confirm that I was right about it. We'll search for like small business cybersecurity, get some news alerts and stuff like that. Um, if you go on Google News right now and you search managed service provider cybersecurity, like, try it right now. Give it a shot. Like, if you're at home right now, literally try it and tell us in the comments how this works for you. There's nothing that I can find in the first 3 pages of Google results that isn't a PR release from a large organization that's like it's like Google or Mandiant or whatever that's talking about like acquiring an MSP or it's something like that. There's almost no discussion of cybersecurity below about the 97th percentile in terms of organization size in the United States. There's no news on it. There's no updates on it. You'll get like polls that are put out about small business owners and how they feel about cybersecurity, but you'll rarely get any news coverage, like journalist news coverage on this. Does anybody like if you get any ideas about what's going on out there, throw it up in the comments and stuff. But Jones, James, have you seen the same thing that I see when I try to find news in small business and MSPs and cybersecurity?
Yeah, there's not a lot.
Mm-hmm. I'm not able to find it either, and that's concerning. We need at least a little bit of that hype or at least a little bit of that news. Like where would we go to find something like that? There's great organizations out there. You got TechCrunch, you got the Register. There's still some really good publications that are doing cybersecurity news, like the Record, right? It makes me want to actually ask maybe a couple of journalists to come on board and have a conversation or two with us and go, hey, is the problem that no one's reading the news when you do stuff that's kind of like this gritty, grimier stuff at the lower level? Like, do they want to read sexy headlines about AWS unsecured, buckets and stuff like that? Or is no one asking you about it, right?
I would actually be really supremely interested in hearing a conversation like that, Tara, with a journalist to understand why we don't see a bit more of this. It's certainly very prevalent. It's certainly out there. And I would love to understand what are the forces that are constraining it. I mean, I wonder if to some degree, my personal pontification is like, Cardi B and the Kardashians are just way more interesting and generate, more clicks on things. I mean, it may be as very
Angelina's
simple.
divorce was finalized this morning. Oh, I've got a great girl chat happening on that right now. Yeah, no, like I've been like on the side a little bit, like watching that as this is happening. Right? Like, what do we pay attention to as humans?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm curious. That I think that would be a really interesting thing if you could get some journalists that were willing to talk about that.
I want a journalist to talk about how Angelina just gave up alimony entirely. But seriously,
Ooh.
Oh, I know, right? But see, this is also a little bit about what I'm talking about. We've got this kind of celebrity gossip and like big news and stuff like that. It's the stuff that tends to float to the top of our consciousness. And maybe there's some room here for a deep read on some of the issues that face larger business, smaller businesses in larger conglomerates, because this is what's feeding in, right? It's always more fun to read a story about one big gas spill in the Gulf of Mexico than the thousands and thousands of small sewage leaks and polluting tankers and stuff rolling on through. Yeah. And yet one of those things has a way bigger impact than the other.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed too, and I made I'll come back to a comment that I think I made the last time I was on. I may have actually been just a guest for the broadcast. But one of the things that I noticed is as I was prepping for the show today, obviously doing the research on the Beyond Trust incident, and saw that obviously there was the Salt Typhoon attack for T-Mobile. And in several articles, it referenced that it was like the 8th telecom to be compromised. Mm-hmm. But there wasn't a parenthetical list of the 8. I actually went in search of it, and I just found big statements on Google that say multiple telecoms, 8 telecoms, include Verizon and AT&T, right? So you kind of have this like very high level skimming of a story without it was not immediately easy to come up with the list of all 8 that everybody's referencing. Everybody's referencing the 8, but not specifically. So that was kind of one observation along this line. The second thing, and the comment that I wanted to come back to, is I sometimes get disappointed because I don't think like the general public cares. I'm sure they care, but maybe not in the same way that we do. And my example of this is I remember when Target was in the news for their POS systems having malware, and it was a really, really big deal. Home Depot also had a breach. And I remember thinking, wow, this could be some serious, some serious damage to these companies. It wasn't. Nobody, the average general public, doesn't remember most of this, and they still shop there, and they still put credit cards in machines. And these are people who don't know how these machines work, but they just stick the card in the machine again, and they go. So, part of it is I'm wondering, like, are we just at this like stratification of general public where the average, Tom, Dick, and Harry just don't care enough or don't understand enough to care enough?
I'm disappointed by it, and I'll tell you something else too. I'm gonna show you folks something that is it's a little hard to see and understand, because I think when we think about what really matters in cybersecurity, we think to ourselves, this should matter to us. Are you able to see right now? Let's see if I can add this. It shouldn't be the whole screen. Stop sharing, present, share screen, allow. All right, let's see if I can do this one. It should be just this one. Share this window. All right, cross your fingers and hope that this one actually works.
Yes.
Okay, no, it didn't work.
I'm
gonna I pasted it in, the Palo Alto versus CrowdStrike, which cybersecurity stock outperformed. Take a look at this one. And what you're gonna see is that CrowdStrike has not only entirely recovered, but they're up for the year.
Wow.
Yeah. So the answer is not that we don't care. I think the answer is that caring doesn't beat shareholder value, and CrowdStrike is providing, for whatever value of shareholder value it is, they're doing their job. So what's concerning is that if that's their job and security isn't, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I'm concerned about with small businesses, because there's no hype, there's no information that lets us figure out how to keep businesses safe. And I'm watching right now that small businesses are just more and more scared about cybersecurity. See if I can find this one right at the moment. Yeah, right now I think the conversation has a really great piece up, and I'll throw this in comments as well too, which is that right now cybersecurity product marketing just scares people more than anything else. Let's see if we can show this right here. So right now, cybersecurity marketing for products just scares people. And I think that one of the things we try to do in this conversation every week is we try to demystify, not add more fun and add more hype. We're telling you what we're actually concerned about so that you can find out what you should actually be paying attention to and what not. CrowdStrike, we weren't actually that worried about it, honestly. We're concerned, and we're going to be continue to be concerned about business email compromise, ransomware, and invoice fraud for the next 10 years, because for small businesses, that will end you. We care about password management for you, because that will end you. CrowdStrike, it's not going to change a small business, right?
Yeah.
That EDR is not going to change a small business. Beyond Trust, not going to matter really, honestly, at the small business level. It'll matter from MSPs, and it'll be because MSPs that are larger have as a supplier organizations that are using Beyond Trust for IAM. And then that's what we're talking about, is the same kind of breach that can hit the treasury, can hit larger MSPs and MSSPs. So we care about that. Those are our clients. And we'll talk about why that matters, but it doesn't do any good to scare people, just more and more and more. And I don't know, I wish we almost had like a not FUD cybersecurity marketing award every year for engaging and educating people. But honestly, the scary stuff floats to the top, right? It's the interesting stuff of the day, the bit of gossip, the water cooler.
Yeah.
James, I know you're in a crowd or in a co-working space right at the moment too. If you stick your head out and you listen to any of the tiny conversations that are happening out there, it's going to be stuff, that floats to the top of the consciousness. There's probably not going to be a whole lot there about the old Kaseya breach, even though that one, there's orgs still cleaning up from it.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Yep.
Right? It's more scary. So what do we think is going to happen this next week that is more cheerful than I really have it over the holidays? Like, I wasn't on pager duty for that, thank God. So what happens this next week that we're a little bit more cheerful about? Oh no, I asked InfoSec people to be optimistic. Hang on, everyone's gonna crawl back into their caves now.
I mean, go for it, Joe.
The blue screen? No, I blue screened when she asked for cheerful.
Man, it's It's complicated. James, tell me you got something. We gotta have some good news.
I mean, traveling and meeting some good quality human beings next week has got me filled with cheer. And also, I think I don't get into the whole new year, new me thing, but
Hmm.
I I just think that it's I think we're due for some better things versus the I don't know however many last 4 years, whatever you know whatever's happened. So I'm just gonna be optimistic and excited for next week.
Hmm. I love it. We're gonna get a chance to all visit together, which is pretty great. At a Red Queen on site. So a lot of fun there. Looks like James and I will get a chance to broadcast live and in person together. It's going to be a blast. And just in case anybody was looking for some good news at the small business and MSP level, there's some really great information out there that is describing. This is Jake Braun, I think, having this conversation with former Assistant National Director for Intelligence. He's talking about an ONCD. He's talking about how the work that we've done over the last 5 years, especially at CISA and filtering down to the small business level has mattered. We're now not having to explain to people anymore why sharing passwords is bad. We still have to make them not do it, especially at least the business owners. We still have to make employees not do that. But now we're looking at major infrastructure changes that are genuinely making people safer. People are actually adopting and working on secure by design coding. We were one of the very first organizations to sign on to the Secure by Design platform and pledge by CISA. I think we're still the tiniest one to do it, honestly. So there's some good news out there. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that people are en masse understanding that we're all in this together and secure by design matters, whether or not you're making money off of it or not. That's a pretty good feeling, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to stop that for a second and say, even if there's not perfect news in cybersecurity, as always, I'm not done yet with that Three Jokers graphic novel, like that Batman graphic novel, which means I get to finish a little bit later on and find out how it ends. I am I'm pretty happy and excited to be part of a community like this one. I'm getting a chance to see a lot of wonderful people. It's the second right at the moment, I think January 2nd, and today's the first day I wrote down on my list of things to do January 2nd, 2025. So that moment you first write the new year, like get a minute to let that sink in for a second. Get some good coffee and treat yourself well, folks. Any last thoughts today, Jones and James?
Um, yeah, I guess my final thought for today is, it is an absolutely new opportunity to start a new year. I'm not a new year, new me person either, but I do recognize that every day is an opportunity to do something positive, to start a great new habit, to just find something you enjoy in life. And that is absolutely where my head is at. The end of 2024 was rough for me on a number of different levels. But 2025 has nowhere to go but up. And this is kicking off January 2nd, office hours with Tara and James. This was fun, a good time, and needed some smiles and some laughs. So that's where I'm at. That's where my head's at today.
Oh, I'm so glad. All right, James Jones, have a wonderful, wonderful week. It's going to be a great chance to get a chance to talk to you folks this next week. And I'll see you all in 1 week at Cybersecurity Office Hours next Thursday, 11 at Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern. Bye just for now, folks. Have a great day.